Well, a recent town hall meeting in Fort Macleod has helped thrust the debate over Alberta's coal policy back to the forefront. And it's ordinary Albertans who are holding the government's feet to the fire on this, as was evident in the pushback the Premier and three of her cabinet ministers got from the more than 500 in attendance. Now, this comes on the heels of the Alberta energy regulator approving this coal exploration project on the eastern slopes of the Rocky Mountains, even though the Grassy Mountain project had been rejected back in 2021. Now, someone who has found himself at the forefront of this debate and someone who was in attendance at that meeting in Fort Macleod is Alberta-based singer-songwriter Corb Lund, who joins us here today. CorbLund.com is the website. You can follow him on Facebook and X, where he's been writing a lot about this issue as of late. Corb, great to have you with us here. Welcome to the program.
Thanks.
Let's take a step back and you've been involved in this in I think for some 5 years now. Look, you've got some ranching background, runs deep in your family, but just how did you get involved in this issue in the first place?
Yeah, that's interesting. I always point out that it wasn't left-leaning eco-maniacs that got me into this. It was generational ranch families west of Nanton who were really, their places are being threatened by some of these mines. And, I'd sound like a broken record, but I always like to point out that I don't have a side here. I don't affiliate with any of the parties. I don't particularly like any of them. It has nothing to do with parties here or win or lose or tribalism. It's just about a bad idea for our water. And also, I'm not anti-industry and I'm not anti-resource. It's just that every project has to be looked at on its own merits, and this one doesn't add up.
Now, yeah, this is a region where there's been a lot of coal mining over the years, and it has had an impact too. Even as putting aside this project for a moment, we just had this report come out about levels of selenium in fish that were pulled from Crow's Nest Lake. So, yeah, there's a history of this industry there, but there are concerns even about what's already there.
Yeah, there are. That study in particular is interesting because there's a doctor, there's a government of Alberta scientist. He works for the government. His name is Dr. Colin Cook, and he's done 4 studies in the last few years, 2 of them on air quality and 2 of them on water quality in that area. And they're all damning of coal. And I've been to 2 town halls in the last few months, and Minister Schultz, in both cases, was crowing about these studies and how they supported coal. And a lot of us in Lethbridge a few months ago asked the government to send us these studies, and they did, to their credit. And we all read them and couldn't believe our eyes, because I don't know if Minister Schultz is ignorant of what's in them or is just so arrogant that she thinks we won't read them, but they're all really damning of coal. And more importantly, I know a whole bunch of media outlets, CTV, Global, the Globe and Mail, Canadian Press, CBC, have all tried to get Dr. Colin to interpret these studies, and the government won't give him permission to speak. And we pay his salary, we pay for the studies. And Rebecca Schultz replied a week ago, the quote was something like, well, he's a trained scientist, not a trained spokesperson. Well, to me, that says, I said this yesterday on Jesperson's show, but to me, all that says is, yeah, a trained scientist is going to stand up there and tell you the truth about what he found and interpret the studies for you. And a trained spokesman is going to spin it how they want to spin it. So that, right. And not only that, sorry to rant, but this latest study is really damning too, because it says that the tissue of the fish, the trout in the Crow's Nest Lake, which is right near Tent Mountain, I believe. I have to check that, but I'm pretty sure it's Tent. One of the closed mines. The selenium content is so high in the fish tissue that the government issued a "don't eat the fish" warning on an obscure website that hardly anybody heard about. And at that town hall meeting, they were asked about that study, and Schultz and Smith stood up there and said, "Oh, it's well below drinking water levels." And no one asked about drinking water levels, and the study wasn't about drinking water levels. It was a deliberate dodge, because the study is about the level of selenium in the fish tissue, which is so high that the government's warned people not to eat it. So to me, that seems negligent, I think, like, in my opinion, like this is health stuff now.
Well, no kidding. Well, let's talk about that town hall, because like I say, I think this, just the response, the pushback has helped thrust this issue back to the forefront. But it was remarkable to see the turnout. And as you alluded to, these are folks in Southern Alberta who might otherwise be, I think, kind of the UCP base. These are farmers, ranchers, landowners, rural folk. And there was a lot of passion. Just your thoughts, first of all, on all of that.
Yeah, it was a real mix of people. There were a lot of what I would guess are left-leaning people, but there are also a lot of hats there, a lot of cowboy hats and a lot of rural people. And this is one of the things that's baffling to me, like, from a sheer, Machiavellian political standpoint. the UCP doesn't really care what the left 50% of the country or the province thinks, which is how it works. But they're eating into their own base as far as I can tell. And the last election wasn't a landslide by any means. So they're starting to, like, this is an issue that's dividing the conservative base because, I mean, there's some right-wing ideologues who will never listen to anything about anti-industry environmental threats. But there's a pretty good chunk, especially in the ag community, that are, you know, myself, we have fourth generation land and we've spent a lot of years trying to keep our water clean and our soil healthy and our grass healthy. And ag people think like that. So, I mean, I don't understand what the hell-bent motivation for the government is on these coal mines. I understand it from the coal companies. That's what they do. I get it. But I don't understand why this government is just so obsessed with putting these coal mines in when the polls say over and over 70% of Albertans don't want them.
So what you heard then at this public hearing or this public meeting, because there wasn't an opportunity for follow-up questions, right? So the Alberta government,
Right.
the premier, the cabinet ministers could give their answer, and then it had to go to the next question. So how did that skew what people were hearing?
Well, with no follow-up questions, it allows the people on stage to say whatever they want. I mean, there were a few follow-ups de facto by people further down in the line, which to their credit, but for the most part, you couldn't challenge their answers. And I don't know. Unfortunately, I've been in this coal thing longer than any of the people on stage, except for maybe Brian Jean. And I, unfortunately, know my stuff. I don't want to know it, but I know it. I've become educated about this. And they were telling, in my opinion, there was a whole bunch of untruths and disingenuous stuff coming off the stage. And it felt very much not like listening to the audience to form their decision making. It felt much more like a predetermined decision and explanations to try to support it, which I don't think is the purpose of a town hall, in my opinion.
Well, and you know, the follow-up to what happened at that public meeting. So you've kind of issued a challenge of sorts to the premier or cabinet ministers to have a more open conversation, even maybe have a debate on this. And a couple of people you've been working with, and one is worth noting because of how much the government sort of defers to this coal committee. Tell us a bit more about Bill Trafford, who you've been working with.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. A few months ago, myself and a woman named Katie Morrison, who works for Canadian Parks and Wildlife, and like you said, the third person, most notably, Bill Trafford, who was on the government's own coal committee, have challenged Smith
Right.
and Schultz and Jean to a public, long-form, moderated debate. Not a public town hall where it gets crazy, but something that can be viewed by the public. And, you know, they spent a lot of oxygen at that Fort Macleod thing saying how, oh, we've made all our decisions on coal based around our own coal committee findings. And Trafford himself was on that committee. He was one of five. And he's one of the people that wants to debate them about this stuff because he thinks they're full of it too. And I don't want to speak for him, but that's paraphrasing, I would say.
So some of what the premier said and her cabinet ministers said in defending this decision, and part of it is this idea that we're almost legally obligated to go ahead with this, or these threats of a lawsuit from this company, that's got to factor into the government's decision. What do you make of that, first of all?
There's a few points about that. Number one, just about anybody knows that when a plaintiff sues somebody, you throw everything in the kitchen sink against the wall, and the number that you sue them for is hardly ever the number you get. It's a negotiation, essentially, right? Number two, they're basing it on, as far as I understand it, on lost profits, right? And I mean, they're big boys. This is the resource game. If you don't get approval, you don't get approval. If the government decides it's a bad idea, I actually support the idea of giving them whatever their input costs are back. That's probably fair. If the Kenny government went to Australia and promised them the moon, they should probably get their input costs back. But I don't know how many millions that would be. But this whole 14 billion figure seems ridiculous. And the third point, which I've thought about a lot, is if you think about how Danielle Smith typically reacts to challenges, for her to stand up there and just say, oh, we're being sued for 14 billion, we'll just roll over, they're going to win. Like, when's the last time she ever didn't fight something like that? Like, that tells me alone that something funny is going on behind the scenes. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't seem like she's the kind of person who would not fight a foreign company if she wasn't in favor of what they're after, based on everything else I've seen her do.
Right. And even the decision itself that allows this project to go forward, and the claims in that decision about how this won't necessarily generate much in the way of selenium, that this is not connected directly to waterways. They've got this pit lake that they have access to, that somehow that alleviates these concerns. How much faith or stock should we put in that?
Zero, zero. They're a coal company, and they want the coal and they want the money, and that's all they care about. And they'll say anything they have to say to get it. In my opinion, I don't want to be sued, so I'll say in my opinion. But that's what's going on. They'll just say anything they got to say, in my opinion, to get into the coal mines or to get into those hills and take out the coal. Another pertinent point is there's an expert coal engineer named, it's hard to pronounce, he's Dutch. His name is Cornelius Colleen, I think I'm getting it right. He's spent 40 years as a coal engineer on 6 continents. He was the guy, he was interviewed yesterday, he's been interviewed a couple of times, but he has personally worked for Teck when they analyzed the coal in the Grassy Mountain area. And he says it's not good metallurgical coal. And he's a 40-year lifetime global expert. And he said the Japanese came to the same conclusion in the 70s. I asked him, I had a big long talk with him. I said, what is the quality of the coal for making steel in the Elk Valley in BC? And he says it's 8 to 10 out of 10. And I said, what is ours in Grassy in the Eastern Slopes? And he said it was mostly 3 to 4 out of 10 quality and a little bit of 6 to 7. And in his opinion, which he stated yesterday in an interview, is that the idea that Northback has is to go in and mine the more rich seams for a couple of years and make it look like it's a productive mine and then sell it to what they call an unsophisticated investor. So if that's true, not only are we, like, I wouldn't be in favor of this even if it was economically beneficial because we're going to have to pay for the cleanup anyway, but it isn't economically viable, not only because it's going to screw up tourism jobs and ag jobs in the middle of an 8-year drought. Apparently, according to this expert, and I would have to look into this because this is relatively new to me, but according to him, the Japanese companies who looked into it a few decades ago, the coal isn't there. So what the hell are we doing? And who's getting paid and why and what's going on?
Well, it's an interesting point. Again, it's worth noting that yes, I mean there is active mining and operations that are occurring on the western side of the mountains there in the Elk Valley or the Elk River region, but when we're talking about the eastern slopes and what this project would involve, it's important to distinguish the two, right? It's not enough to say, well, it goes on there, so it's fine to do it here.
Well, I assumed that. I assumed it was the same seam because they're so close, but he says it's not true.
Yeah. On the economic side, and we did see there was this vote that took place in Crow's Nest Pass, and there's support in the community, I guess, for this project, and understandably so. They've had economic challenges. There's the potential of jobs associated with this project, but as you alluded to, I mean, we need to frame that in a broader context, don't we?
Yeah, the referendum they had was, I mean, I don't want to be too negative, but it was kind of a stunt. It was a dog and pony show because, number one, the mine site is not located in the Crow's Nest Pass municipality. The jobs are because the people that live there want to go work there. But the mine site itself is located in Ranchlands MD, the next county over, and their county councilors had a vote on it and unanimously rejected it. They don't want any part of it in their county. And thirdly, it doesn't account for the 200,000 people downstream users, a lot of them in the ag business. And I don't know, I mentioned this, but we're in, I think, year number 8 of a brutal drought. And if you ask anybody in ag, we are in a drought. And there's no extra water, A, to use for coal mining, or B, to contaminate. And so that to try to stand on, and Smith has done this a number of times, to stand up there and say that democracy is spoken, it's just silly. It's silly and juvenile and transparent because the only people they asked were permanent residents in the Crow's Nest Pass who were I think it amounted to 1,500 people. So they're going to decide on the fate of a mine that's not in their municipality and for the downstream users. Come on.
Right. So where does this leave coal policy in Alberta? Because we have a ban on open pit mining, and I guess this project's kind of being grandfathered in or an exception. So where are we now moving forward here?
I don't know. It's tough. I mean, I feel like it's hard. Part of the strategy, I think, on the part of the government and the coal companies is to grind people down because we have jobs and hockey practice and we don't have time to spend all our time on coal. So they just keep coming and coming and coming. And one of the most frustrating things is Grassy Mountain was turned down by the provincial AER and the federal Joint Review Panel. And Northback or Benga appealed it 3 times, lost the appeals. It was a completely dead project. So how many times do Albertans have to fight the same mine and over and over and over? And also, you know, the science aside and the economics aside, both valid points, but take those off the table. No matter what it is, if 70% of the province doesn't want coal mines, even for aesthetic reasons, do it. You guys work for us. You are employees. People don't want it. Listen to your employers. I'm speaking to the premier and the ministers. They work for us.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is interesting you mentioned aesthetic reasons. The same Alberta government that doesn't want windmills close to mountains, really just for aesthetic reasons. So there are certainly some double standards when it comes to what kind of development they're happy with.
Yeah, you know, I've never been involved in anything political in my entire 35-year career in music. I've deliberately stayed out of it. But my 5 years in this has been so deflating to my opinion of people in government, and not just the UCP, all of them. It's just that the whole thing is just, and in this particular case, this group of people is just full of it. Like they'll just say anything they got to say, and they just count on a cloud of information and people being busy and not having time to research it. But I've dug my heels in and put in my time and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours, and in my opinion, they're full of shit. They're just doing it for, I don't know why they're doing it. I don't know. We can speculate on why they're doing it, I guess.
Yeah, but it is interesting because I think if they were really truly bullish about this, like they would be out there touting this and bragging about this and saying, look what we've done, look what we've approved. Like it's pretty clear they just kind of want this to go away, to be quiet, to not have to talk about it. So I do wonder maybe if this town hall was a bit of a wake-up call that people are following this, people are upset about this. They're not going to be able to make this quietly go away. Do you think there's anything to that?
I would hope so, but I'm also shocked by the lack of the shame gene with these people. Like there's just no sense of honor or personal shame about being dishonest. I hope so. I hope so. I don't know. When you look at motivations for this, when the ecology and the water angle doesn't add up, and it's a handful of jobs and the economics add up, I will say this: our former environment minister, Robin Campbell, went very shortly from his job as our environment minister to be the head coal lobbyist for the Coal Association of Canada. I'll also say that our premier, Kenny, who got us into this mess, is now on the board, I believe, of Bennett Jones, which is a large law firm that represents the coal companies, the foreign companies, against the people of Alberta. So I'm not saying there's corruption. I'm not saying there's anything illegal, but it sure seems greasy to me. And when I look, I don't know. I'm not. That's all I'll say about that.
No, fair enough. Well, we'll see where this all goes from here. I don't think this issue is going away. As mentioned, you've been posting about this. You're on Facebook, X, at Corb Lund, and of course, corblund.com. And you're still busy with your other job. You got some summer dates coming up, including some here in Alberta. Much more is mentioned, corblund.com. Corb, thanks so much for making some time for us. Really appreciate your perspective on this.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.